Thank you, Garrick. Do we have my
Yes, right.
PowerPoint there? Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm grateful to be here. So yeah, a little bit background on me. Jordan Mott with Intero Real Estate. I've been in the industry for about 8 years now. Started when I was 21 years old. Last year, I individually did 100 transactions totaling over $160 million of volume. And here today, I'm just kind of going to touch on a few points about what it looked like to get to that point and some of the key principles behind that, right? So, Garrick, if we could go to the second slide. I made my first million in real estate year 3. I was 24 years old. And I think that it all goes back to this, right? I mean, you got to respect the grind. It's a journey. A lot of people from the outside looking in think that we make a ton of money and they're going to get into the industry and they're going to be able to drive a fancy car. They're not going to have to work that hard. They're going to have a bunch of free time. It's completely the opposite of that, right? I mean, your schedule is dependent on other people's schedules. You're not working a 9 to 5. I tell all my clients when I first meet them that basically I'm working at every hour of the day except for midnight to 4 a.m. when I take a quick nap. But when I was 12 years old, I started a clean and green business, right? Where I would go and drop flyers on people's doorsteps, offering my services to mow their lawns and trim the edges and clean up their yard waste, right? I was 12 years old. I was taking my mower from my parents' house, pushing that down the streets, going door to door, and I think at 12 years old, I made $3,000 one summer. I don't think that necessarily that resonated with me at the point at 12 years old, what that was, but I look back on that, and that was part of the journey leading up to what I'm doing today, right? It's the same principles of hard work. It's the same principles of putting in the effort. And when I look back at it today, it's an example of if I was willing to put in the work, then I was able to generate the results, right? I feel like a lot of people these days have these aspirations to be super successful, but there's a huge sense of entitlement in our world today, and the majority of people do not want to put in the work that it takes to accomplish the results that they desire. Next slide. Consistency and persistency. So there is so many ways to generate business in this industry as far as I'm concerned. And different things are gonna work for different people, right? But what I figured out is that whatever you decide works for you has to be consistent and persistent, right? So I know people that make millions of dollars a year and all they do is cold call. I've cold called for 15 minutes in my entire career. I hate being on the phones. I know people that go and knock doors that make millions of dollars a year. I hate knocking doors. I've knocked doors for probably an hour in my entire career. But what I was doing at the very beginning was that I realized that farming was going to be a long-term play. And anytime I go into a farm, I know that I'm realistically not going to see something from that farm for 12 to 18 months. And if you quit before that, you've wasted all your time and effort leading up to that, right? So farming today looks different for me than farming did at the beginning. The beginning, farming was a very cost-effective strategy to get my name out there. And I was dropping flyers on people's doorsteps, right? And I was not knocking on their doors because I was dropping these flyers on their doorsteps at 4 a.m. I made sure that I had 500 flyers dropped on people's doorsteps every morning before I was at the gym and before I get into the office, right? And the reason behind that was I didn't know when one of those people was going to call me from one of those flyers, but I thought of it as playing the lottery, right? If someone does call from one of those flyers is worth $25,000, $50,000, $75,000 in commissions, depending on where you're dropping those flyers, right? So I was persistent about that. I will tell you, if you decide to drop flyers at 4 a.m., you'll figure out very quickly who has dogs, motion lights, and the newspaper driver is creepy as F, driving very slowly down the street behind you. So any action that you take, right? I mean, social media is huge in our world today. Everything that you do has to be consistent and persistent. So I'm very consistent about being active on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, right? There's not a day that goes by that you don't see a post from me that's something real estate related. And at the end of that, on every one of those posts, you always see, who do you know of looking to buy or sell real estate in the Silicon Valley or Bay Area? I'm never too busy for your referrals. And that materialized into being a joke amongst my friends, like, oh, are you never too busy? Like if I didn't pick up a call from someone that wasn't a client or something, there was a voicemail, oh, you must be too busy for my referrals, right? And I coached high school football for a couple of years, and some of those kids followed me on Instagram too, and like one day in the weight room, one of them says, hey guys, I got an announcement for you. He's like, Coach Mott's never too busy for your referrals, right? So people catch on to that when they see it. And I was like, that's great, call me in 20 years when you're ready to buy a house. Next slide. Outwork your competition. So if you're brand new, you're given your real estate license, you don't know a damn thing about how to sell a house, you don't know what goes into the process, but you're told that you can do it, right? I got into the industry at 21 years old. I walked into listing presentations, and some people, I literally remember one time walking in and someone's like, did you just graduate high school? Like, it's been a few years, but kind of. But what I knew was that something that I had control over was how hard I was gonna work, right? I promised myself that no one was gonna work harder than I did toward accomplishing the goals that I desired. And that held true, right? Because I would go into one of those listing presentations and I'd ask them who else they're interviewing, and it was always people that had more experiences. But what I could promise on my behalf was that I was gonna work harder than any of those other people that they were interviewing. And that resonates with a lot of people, right? Because you're handling for what the majority of people is their biggest asset. So they wanna know that you're working as hard as you possibly can on their behalf. I also remember that when I started, before I was licensed, I was working for what I thought were top agents at the time, and I look back at it now and they're doing like 15 deals a year, and now I'm thinking, what the hell were they doing with all their damn free time, right? But this is an industry where you can truly create whatever you want. There's no cap on what you can go create or how you're gonna build it. So put in the effort and the work to accomplish those desired results. Next slide. No fear of rejection. So this is an industry where you're gonna be rejected a lot. It's like million first dates almost at this point, 8 years in. But a lot of people are fearful of rejection, right? Or what other people are gonna think about their actions. Like, there's people that I know talk shit about my social media and how much I post, and no one wants to see that. And like, my previous boss and I, like, we had some mutual friends outside of the office, and one of them was like, you really need to tell Jordan to tone it down on social media about what he's posting about his business. He's like, and his response to him was, Jordan makes 10 times as much money than you and is 30 years younger than you, so I don't think you're one to be telling him what to do, right? Yeah. But a lot of people think that they need to be posting something elaborate, or whatever they put out needs to be as elaborate. And Kenny Fast just walked in the room, and I know during one of his sales meetings the other day, one of my flyers was called out for, like, part of the verbiage was cut off, right? And that's on my assistant, but it doesn't matter as long as you're putting that stuff out there and keeping your name in front of people. Nothing needs to be as elaborate as you want to convince yourself that it needs to be. Quick story about not having fear of rejection, right? Back probably 4 or 5 years ago, I was working on putting together 4 parcels together for a new subdivision for a builder, and I knew we went into contract on the first one and we weren't going to close on it unless we acquired the other 3. Luckily, the second one was already going up for sale, so we got that one. The third one, I knocked on the door multiple times, no response. Finally got a guy to open the door, did not speak any English at all, only spoke Russian, so there was nothing I was going to be able to do with that, but I went and found a Russian-speaking agent to help me on that, so we were able to go and put that together, and then we were left with the 4th one, right? And the 4th one was the same deal. I was trying to get in communication with them for a couple months, and older lady finally answered the door, and she not so kindly told me to F off and get off her doorstep, and that she was going to die in her house. And I'm just thinking, okay, that's a disclosure. And so I did some research, and I noticed that there was 3 people on title, right? And so I figured, okay, maybe it's a husband, wife, son, other family member. So I did some research on all those names. I found out that that 3rd person was indeed the son of the parents who lived there that were elderly, and they were original owners of the house. I figured out where he worked and got his contact information, and it was some type of machine parts cleaning company in Newark or something. So I called their sales department and I'm like, hey, is so-and-so work here? I was told that I need to talk to him. I have some machine parts that need to be cleaned. And they're like, oh great, this is a sales department, we'll gladly help you, what do you need? And I was like, no, I need to talk to so-and-so direct. And so I went through leaving 2 or 3 voicemails for this guy, and finally I got him on the phone, and he understood the value of what was taking place, where their property was worth more now than it was ever gonna be as part of this subdivision, otherwise things was gonna be built around them. And he agreed to a meeting with me and his parents, right? So now I'm sitting at a table with this lady that told me to F off and get off her doorstep, and she was dying in her house. And 4 months later, 2 days before Christmas, we ended up signing a contract, and she gave me a big hug and said that I made her life and made her the happiest woman that she could be, right? And she said she was going to Vegas too, and I was like, don't spend all that money in Vegas, please. But a lot of people would have walked away from that situation, right? They would have gave up the first time they were rejected by that lady on the doorstep. So don't be fearful of rejection. Every time you're rejected, you're one step closer to getting someone who is going to value your services. Next slide. Strive for excellence. So I think there's a lot of people in this industry that kind of do this as a hobby, or like I said, get in and think that it's going to be easy and they're going to make a ton of money. But strive to be as excellent as you possibly can be in every aspect, right? Because the consumer is going to take note of that, and it's very easy to set yourself apart from the competition, right? Like I see a lot of people I see a lot of agents and the material that they leave at listing presentations or how they communicate with buyers, and it's not something that, even if I was a consumer, that I would think twice about hiring that person, right? A listing presentation that's printed off on black and white, flimsy paper, or a CMA that's just stapled together. Like anytime you're going on a listing presentation, you have an hour to convince them to pay you what a lot of people make in a year to sell their house, right? I mean, I'm dumbfounded when I walk out of listing presentations and I'm like, wow, I didn't know these people. I just met with them for an hour and they're about to pay me $100,000 to sell their house. Like, it blows my mind, but you need to be able to provide that value to them and know that they're gonna receive excellence on your behalf, right? So in every aspect, I don't even think that's only dealing with the consumer. I think that's dealing with your colleagues. I think that's with everyone outside of the office as far as your personal lives are concerned, and working on yourself, right? If you're not striving for excellence with yourself, you're not gonna be able to portray that excellence to everything else that you're trying to accomplish outside of your own well-being. Next slide. So I received this email yesterday from the CEO of Home Services, Gino Blafari, and I figured that it was a good exit to this presentation. But Invaluable, right? Yes, spelled just like that, because at the end of the day, the value you bring to your organization, your clients, your colleagues, and the people in your life is highly individualized, a reflection of your unique experiences, skills, talent, determination, and ability to inspire others to achieve their goals faster than they would in your absence. I understand my income is a measure of the value I bring to the marketplace, right? So you're in control of those things, right? How much value are you gonna bring to your clients? How much value are you gonna bring to the industry? How much value are you gonna bring to those directly working beside you? How much value are you gonna bring to your family? And how much value are you gonna bring to the stranger that you run into that you never knew before, right? I mean, I try to live my life in regards to giving back as much as I possibly can, because I know that I don't get to keep what I have unless I'm willing to go to give it away. And so I just think that that's something that's good to end on, and try to be as invaluable as possible. Questions? Okay, perfect.
Actually, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you have any, like, when you were talking about like personal development and like being, the best in everything you do you have any, like, somebody else mentioned a book they recommend. Is there any, like, things that you look at for inspiration for yourself to, inspire you, like, websites or books or podcasts or anything like that?
To be honest, no, I absolutely hate to read. I'm doing this thing called 75 Hard right now,
Oh, that's hard.
which
I've done it.
part of that is 10 pages of reading a day, and that is the most difficult part of that for me. But yeah,
Okay.
no, I'm go for it.
When you started your farming with the dropping off the material, how long did it take you actually to start seeing response from that?
So I think that the majority of them are around 6 to 9 months before I saw anything, right? And my approach on farming is that something has to be delivered to that geographic area every 2 weeks. And anything that I'm farming, I also have the title company pull out the non-owner occupied list, so that they're getting things every 2 weeks as well. And again, it comes down to consistency and timing, because you never know exactly when someone in that neighborhood is going to need something, but they're not going to remember your name very easily if it's a month or every 2 months that they're getting something from you. But every 2 weeks, you're putting yourself at a higher probability of hitting them at the right time, right? But for like example, there's a 500 home neighborhood in San Jose that I started farming, I think back in 2018. Last year I had 9 out of the 13 listings that were in that neighborhood, right? And so everybody knows to call me in there now, and I just looked at it yesterday, and there's not anyone that's had more than one listing out there in that neighborhood over the 4 years as well. So it's pretty dominant there. Farming today, I mean, at the beginning of COVID, a lot of people were freaked out about what was going to happen with our industry, right? And I heard left and right, oh, I'm pulling back my marketing efforts. I don't want to spend right now. I don't know what the future looks like. And I saw that as an opportunity for me to go and increase my marketing efforts and spend more if everyone was pulling back. So I started to experiment with EDDM, and I created a 17,000 home farm. And my thought was, okay, I'm going to try this for 6 months. If one thing comes of it, fantastic, I'm going to continue to do it. If not, I'm going to chalk it up as a $36,000 loss. The first time I sent it out, a listing came from it. I think that's because of how big it is. I mean, you can't send out that much stuff and have no one call you. And now I've expanded it to about 130,000 mailers every month.
Wow.
So within your farms, are there any specific community style type of events or anything that you're doing to get your face out there outside of just doing the millers?
Not yet. Everything's all just direct mail as far as farming is concerned right now.
So pretty much just flyers at all the farms and direct mails is pretty much how you're generating majority of your business.
Still, a majority of my business is referral based. It's about 66% is referral based, but I think a lot of that is
From the
intertwined with, well, some of it comes from referrals from past clients within the farm too, but I think a lot of that is intertwined in exposure on social media, and staying in front of your past clients, right? Because I think one important lesson that I learned very early on was that your clients will forget about you unless you give them a reason to remember you. And I know we all want to think that we're very memorable, but if you're not putting information in front of them regularly, they will go a different direction. And the first time I learned that was when a past client listed their house with someone else, right? And that was a $40,000 wake-up call to me at that point. And so now all my past clients, they're on my social media channels. I'm connected with them. They're getting quarterly CMAs from me, just like you would from a financial advisor. And any buyer who purchases my listings, regardless of whether they were my client or not, are getting quarterly CMAs from me as well, because the likelihood that their agent is staying in touch with them is very slim. So yeah, about 25% of my business is coming from farming, but there's definitely other avenues to that. I think you need to have multiple pillars to your business.
So I would question, how do you find the balance between striving for excellence and being a perfectionist?
I don't know much about balance. That's something that I'm trying to achieve as we continue to grow, and as priorities in life become different, right? I mean, when I was 21, 22, 23, all I had to do was work, right? Now I have a great relationship, and she has a daughter, so those are priorities to me at this point. I didn't have any assistant help until my 4th year in real estate, after I did 56 transactions in 1 year by myself. I should have done that sooner, but now it's me, 1 full-time assistant, and in December I hired a buyer's agent. So I think it goes back to touching on what Dale said earlier too, about leveraging things, right? Your time's more valuable than a lot of other things that you can do, but achieving balance in this industry is definitely something that I know the majority of people struggle with.
Okay, thank you, Jordan.
Yeah.
Thank you.